We live in this world where everywhere you go, you see kids on screens. Literally everywhere you go. What age is it appropriate to give a kid semi-unlimited access to an iPad or an iPhone or any other device that we put in their hands? What is a safe age?
Well, there's probably not one number because we really do have to think about what competencies and what maturity a child has, and then what specifically are they going to do with that device. There are definitely some ways that a very young person can use a device for great educational outcomes, but also there might be some older kids who don't yet have the competence to know how to avoid the cyber hate or the social comparison or more problematic or addictive aspects of some platforms.
Got it. So let's jump ahead to that older age, because we all know 13-year-olds who are like 18-year-olds and 18-year-olds who are like 13-year-olds. Do the current guidelines sit with respect to what is a reasonable amount of time for a kid to spend on one of these devices to avoid getting into some of the dodgy territory that exists out there?
Well, similar to the age limit, there's not an amount of time that is good or bad.
Right.
It really depends what adolescents are doing when they're on social media. So if they are online connecting with their close friends and having good, happy conversations, a few hours is probably not problematic. If they're online for a few minutes and are exposed to cyber hate or something negative, a few minutes is too much.
Got that. So what can parents do to keep an eye on where it is that their kids are going and try and guide them to avoid some of those places we don't want them to go to?
Well, we have to encourage moderation. Parents can let their kids on these devices and to using some of the platforms, but we should probably be talking with our kids more explicitly. What are you seeing on there? What do you think it means when you see someone liked a post? What are some of the things you would do if you saw something inappropriate or dangerous being talked about? Too many parents, I think, because none of us grew up with this, kind of throw up our hands and say, I don't know what this is all about, and I don't know why you spend all this time, but we actually should do the opposite. Help kids know that we're a safe space to approach when you have questions and you have concerns about what you're seeing on there.
So how do we know when our kid is having a hard time controlling themselves? Are there ways for us to be able to, assuming we don't run biomarkers for stress on, teens, but are there ways that we know that we might have a problem on our hands? Pretty much every parent of a teen that I know tells me their kid is addicted to their phone. And this term addicted gets thrown out there a lot. But clearly there is a stress-related relationship with a number of different devices, but mainly phones. How do we know when our kids are potentially in trouble?
There's a level at which social media use or phone use may be problematic. If it starts to interfere with their daily lives, if it is interfering with their sleep, if they want to disconnect but cannot, these are some signs that it may be at a level that's a little bit more problematic.
What does the research tell us about what is happening inside the brains of adolescents that are having a hard time?
So we know that the adolescent years, the brain is undergoing more development and reorganization than almost any other developmental period other than infancy right after birth. And so the brain is going through this state of development when it's especially sensitive to its environment. When adolescents engage in very high levels of social media use, when they're what we refer to as habitually checking their social media accounts, we see that their brains are undergoing pretty dramatic changes in the way that it is developing and responding to its environment. Adolescents who habitually check social media are showing increases in brain regions that are what we call the salience network. These are areas of the brain that respond to things that are important or meaningful in the environment, whether that is something like a peer or avoiding punishment or seeking out rewards. The brain is becoming hypersensitive to these cues in the environment for those adolescents who are using social media more.
Got it. So this term, social media, I find really interesting because when you look across the animal kingdom, one of the evolutionary advantages that individuals who are strong in a community have is their ability to be able to socialize and interact with other members of the community, whether you're looking at chimpanzees, mice, or humans. When kids are jumping on things like Snapchat to be able to interact with each other, or the IG, are they interacting socially? Are they building those social skills?
Adolescence is a time when they're supposed to be experimenting with new kinds of social relationships that are deeper in emotional intimacy, that allow them to try on new roles, new complex ways of interacting with one another. Social media offers some of that, and the potential for that if you use maybe direct messaging or if you reach out to folks. But the like button, the count of your followers is not really part of what we would hope adolescents would develop and be focused on mostly. In fact, stripping away all of the complex social signals we get verbally and non-verbally to just a thumbs up or a thumbs down is kind of taking away some of the beauty of what we can do as humans and really understand and develop sophisticated social signals and comprehension.
So this is not boding well, you're saying, for the social development and networks, real networks that these kids will be involved in further down the road.
Social media is brilliant technology that could be used incredibly well to help kids' mental health and social development, but that might not make a profit. So right now it's being used in ways that are keeping kids engaged for as long as possible, and that seems to be harmful for development.
So it sounds like you do strongly believe that there are pros and cons to the social media, the role of social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the other things I'm curious about is how much we really understand about the world that kids live in with respect to the adults that they see around them, and how much better we could model responsible behavior on our devices with respect to what kids see and what they follow. I mean, is this really something for us to worry about?
Yeah, kids learn how to use social media from other peers, but also from their parents. Even when they're little, they can report that their parents' use of their parents' devices is making it hard for them to get their own parents' attention. They don't understand why it is that their parents are on screens all the time, but they can't. And some of us as adults, we might also notice that we're using social media in ways that make us feel worse rather than better. So this is really a family level kind of conversation because we all probably have something to learn about how to use social media in the most healthy way possible.
Got it. So both of you have had different training backgrounds. What took you to doing the work that you're doing right now? What was the thing that made you go, this is where I need to be?
Yeah.
A developmental psychologist. I understand and specialize in adolescent development and particularly related to the brain. And I'm fascinated by how the social context affects adolescent development, how it impacts and interacts with how their brain develops and prepares them for adulthood. And most of my training and research to date had been examining the family and peer context and those very important social roles that are affecting adolescents. During my PhD, social media was maybe starting to increase and become a thing, but it certainly wasn't the primary social context of adolescent development. And several years ago, the landscape of adolescence changed and social media became really the context, the social context of which development is happening. And so that's when I became fascinated by how it might be impacting and changing adolescent development.
Terrific.
My research has been on how kids get along with their peers, how popularity works, how peer influence works. Also, my research has been on suicide. And in both areas, teens started telling us that so much of what they were doing was based on their technology use and their online use. And some of what they were experiencing online was even teaching them how to hurt themselves. So from both research traditions, I found that if you want to understand adolescents today, you have to be studying the online world.
Got it. What are your biggest concerns about the impacts that you're seeing of the online world and social media in particular on the kids that you study? Biggest worry?
I'm really concerned about all of the things that kids are missing in the time that they're now spending on social media. They're missing the opportunity to sleep, for exercise, for face-to-face conversation and practicing those sophisticated social skills. If you don't get that in adolescence, it's going to be a little bit hard to get a little bit down the road, if not too late. So I think there are ways that the online world can foster amazing aspects of development, and research shows that it can have beneficial effects. But it also seems to be taking away some of the opportunities that are built in adolescence for a reason.
Some of the most concerning things to me are related to the unknowns. The platforms themselves change so quickly. Adolescents are shaping the way that they're using these platforms, and there's so much more for us to understand that we don't know yet.
Do either of you work with groups that also do like brain imaging at the same time as the developmental psychology side of things with respect to online and social media use, as in actual changes that are occurring?
Yeah, we're doing magnetic resonance imaging, MRI,
Great.
and looking at how the brain is changing developmentally across time. We follow adolescents longitudinally to see how their brain is changing. We're really interested in understanding not only how their experiences online and on social media might shape their brain, but how changes in the brain may shape the way that they're using and interacting with these social media platforms.
Absolutely. I saw a really cool review paper recently from a group that normally works in MS, but during COVID, they had taken the opportunity to get the whole group essentially mining the literature on truly understanding the rates of myelination over the lifespan. And they have this incredible graph where we all believe that there's this like huge slope of myelination, between the ages of 2 and 8, because it's when kids are actually learning for the first time. But there's a much steeper one between the ages of 13 and 18 that I was completely unaware of until very recently, which was shocking. Because it's activity dependent. I wonder how long it's going to be before we get to see real changes in strange pathways that are now interconnected more because of the online obsession in teen brains that are undergoing that. No, I'm curious if...
Oh, no, I love your point, and I think, no one would let their baby stare at a screen all day long because they would say that's going to affect their brain. But we give kids a device at exactly the age when their brain is going through the second most important period of development, and we actually give them a device to enable them to spend the entire time staring at a screen. We should be just as concerned at 13 as we are about that baby.
I completely agree. I used to think it would be all about the homunculus, and there's already a huge thumb. But it would be twice the size in the homunculus of current teens.
With the swiping.
Because of this. I would like to finish up with both of you. The kind of research that you're doing, of course, is really critical for us to try and get ahead of this, because we're already way behind in the context of some of this technology really taking over the lives of the young people that we care about. What is your biggest hope for the research that you're doing to be able to directly impact the lives of families that are dealing with this? And what do we need to do? I mean, what do organizations like BrainMind need to do to begin to get the conversation going, to fill in the holes that will get your biggest hopes to where they need? So that's a two-part question.
We do this science not just so we can learn the answers for ourselves. We are interested in every parent, every teacher, and every teen understanding what we've learned so they can make decisions on how to use technology and social media for themselves. Some people will learn from what we study that they have the opportunity to make different decisions and to use social media in ways that actually promote healthy outcomes and really minimize the negative effects. I think at BrainMind, there's such an interesting possibility of thinking about how to create platforms that would actually enhance kids' mental health and develop positive competencies while using all this brilliant technology that keeps kids engaged. Something that married the two of those together would have tremendous effects on improving the mental health of all teens in society.
Great.
Yeah, social media and technology are not going away. Taking it away is not the answer. And so our hope is that we'll start to conduct the science that helps us to develop ways that all adolescents and families can thrive in the context of this increasingly digital world. Yeah, BrainMind has brought together individuals from such diverse backgrounds and perspectives in a way that is, I think, going to create so much synergy and exciting new ideas.
Scientists like us have learned so much about what might work and what might not work, but we're not trained as business people or entrepreneurs, so we don't know how necessarily we can most effectively get this knowledge applied and in the homes or in the minds of as many people as possible so they can benefit from what we know. And this is an opportunity to really put all those areas of expertise together for making people well.